This video is sponsored by Squarespace. What's going on, guys? Vincent here from thecreativedojo.net. Hope you guys are doing well out there. Today's quick tip video, I want to share with you guys how to create this kind of like Cinema 4D effector system right within After Effects using some simple expressions. And with this technique, you can actually create some pretty cool dynamic live animations that's fully responsive. So I have this little square, and I can use this square to drive animations. So it's animating these circles right here dynamically live without any keyframes needed. And it's a very, very nice way to kind of create this kind of like area effector or field effector, or what I like to call a proximity effector, where we're driving animations based on the proximity of layers together. And this can be anything. This can be color or any other effect properties, pretty much any property that you can keyframe and animate and apply expressions to. And you can use that to drive animations based on the proximity of layers next to each other. And so, I can create a whole series on how to create different effectors within Cinema 4D within After Effects. This particular one is just a basic kind of like a proximity effector, but we can go on and create other things in the future. So if you like tutorials like this, let me know down in the comments down below. So I'm going to go ahead and hop into the tutorial composition, and I'm going to go ahead and disable some of these circles right here. So we just have one circle to focus on. And what I wanted to do is I want this circle to react to this little square. So when I get close to it, it does something. And in this particular case, we'll be doing some scale and position just to kind of give you an idea of how to do it. And so how this works is we're going to select our circle, right? This is where we want things to actually move and animate and be reactive to. So I'm going to go ahead and hit P on the keyboard to bring up the position, right? And let's say we want to animate the position of something when this square gets closer to it. So I'm going to go ahead and open the position property, hold down Alt or Option on the Mac, and hit the stopwatch icon to apply an expression. And we're going to write some simple code here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new variable. So call it var p1 or point 1. And this is going to equal this layer position semicolon. So p1 is this point 1, and this point 1 is going to equal this layer's position. So this right here. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter and type in var point 2. And point 2 is going to be the position of our kind of like our controller or our effector layer. In this particular case, it's a square right here called effector. So I'm going to pick whip to the effector right here. So it's going to select the effector layer, and I'm going to type in position. Or you can pick whip directly to the effector's position. So P1 is the circle layer's position. P2 is the effector layer's position. Make sure everything is closed with a semicolon. And so I'm going to go ahead and make a new variable called delta. Var delta equals sub P1, P2. And so basically delta is going to equal the difference of these two vectors right here, P1 and P2. Sub is a function built into After Effects. And so sub is going to subtract these two vectors right here, P1 and P2, and give us a delta. So once we have that delta, I want to go ahead and find the actual length. So the actual length of the vector, right? And to do that, there's also another function. So I'm going to call this var distance equals length delta, and then close it with a semicolon. So basically we have point 1 and point 2, and we're going to subtract the vectors to get a delta. And then we're going to calculate the distance of that delta using the length function right here. So now we have the distance between these two layers right here, and that's based on the anchor point position. Now to tie all this together and actually use the distance that we've calculated, we need to use a very, very powerful expression. I think one of my most favorite expressions within After Effects, which is the linear function right here. And it takes 5 main properties. And the whole goal of it is to kind of remap data, right? So it's going to remap a range and output the range that we were interested in. And I know that's kind of confusing to understand, but let's go ahead and break it down. So the first parameter that it needs is something that is changing. So what is changing in this expression? That is our distance, right? Our distance is changing. It's ranging from 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 to 0. And so luckily we already have a variable for our distance called distance. So type in distance. That's going to be our changing variable right there. And now what is the range that we expect this distance to be? So I expect the distance to be from 0 to, let's say, 1,000. And so it's going to look at our distance and then look at the range from 0 to 1000 in terms of the distance. And it's going to remap that to, this value and that value. And so effectively, it's going to take a look at our distance, right? Take a look at our distance, whatever the distance is. And whenever the distance is from 0 to 1000, it's going to remap that and output this value to that value. And that's how it works here. Now, it gets a little confusing because in After Effects, position is not expressed as one value. It's expressed as an array of values. So I'm going to replace the value with an array right here and an array right here. So I'm going to go ahead and type in value bracket 0, comma, value bracket 1. And so this whole thing here is just the position right here. I'm going to go ahead and do the exact same thing here, value 0, which is the X value, comma, value bracket 1, which is the Y value. And if you're using a 3D layer or you're trying to create a 3D link, then you would need to type in comma, value bracket 2 for the Z axis right there. But in this particular case, I'm going to keep everything 2D. So we only need to worry about the X and Y values right here. So make sure that the brackets are all there because the expression editor can kind of delete things on accident. So you want one overall bracket, and then you want the value 0 bracket and the value 1 bracket. So it's going to look something like this, and then the exact same thing on the other side. But this does no good, right? Because we're just remapping the distance from 0 to 1000 to our position that's unchanged. So whenever the distance is 0, aka whenever the square is really close to our circle, I want the position to kind of drop. So, we'll keep the X axis the same, but we'll add, let's just do, 200 right here for the Y value. And then when the distance is, far away, like 1000, then I want the position to be itself, aka unchanged. And so if we click away and apply it, this is what it kind of looks like here. So if I go ahead and keep my square kind of far away, it's kind of in the same position as it was, but as I get closer and approach the circle, it's going to push it down by 200 pixels. So let's go ahead and recap this. We're going to use a function called linear, which will remap values, right? So what are we remapping? We're remapping the distance, whatever it is, which is constantly changing, from 0 to 1000. And whenever it's 0, it's going to be this stuff right here. And whenever it's 1000, it's going to be this stuff right here. And so whenever it's really, really close, or aka when the distance is 0, we're going to push the position in the y-axis down by 200 pixels. And whenever it's further away, 1000 pixels or further away in distance, then it's going to be just our regular position right here. And you can always change this up and add different numbers, and you can shift things however you want. This is just kind of example right here. And so now whenever we do that, we have this kind of effector base. So maybe you're thinking, well, maybe 1000 is too large, right? This square is affecting my circle too far away. I mean, it's not even that close. We can change it from 1000 to like 250, right? So whenever our square's within 250 pixels, then it'll start affecting the circle, right? And you can use the same idea to drive other properties. So for example, if I just copy this and hit S on the keyboard and apply to scale, paste it in, it's pretty much the same exact thing. Scale is actually an array as well. So we could probably just kind of keep this here, except instead of adding 200 to just the Y scale right here, we can just maybe add 100 here and 100 here. And so now whenever we get close, not only will it be pushed down, but it will also be scaled up by 200% at the max. So again, what this is saying is whenever we are 0 distance away, it's going to be, this scale right here, plus 100 in X and Y axis. And then whenever it's further away, 250 or further, it's going to be its regular scale, 0 and 1 right here. And one last example, if I wanted to kind of apply maybe like a 1D property, right? Because everything so far we've been doing 2D properties like scale and position and whatnot. But if I want to apply Gaussian blur, right? And so whenever I get close to it, I want it to blur. Same exact thing. You can do this with any keyframeable property within After Effects. Go ahead and hit Alt or Option on the keyboard on the blur, paste our expression in. Now, blurriness is a one-dimensional property. So we don't need, these brackets and arrays and whatnot, because again, it's a 1D property. So you can simply just type in the value. So when we are 0 distance away, I want the blur to be, I don't know, like 500. And then whenever we're 250 pixels or beyond away, I want the blur to be 0. So you can just directly type in the values just like that for simple properties. And now if we get closer, it'll blur, and then it'll kind of unblur. So the linear expression doesn't just animate from 0 and 250, it animates from everything in between as well. So if you're between, 100 or 150 or 225, whatever, it animates everything from 500 to 0. So it does all the kind of manual work for you. And right now we're using the linear expression, which is again, very, very linear. So, the closer you get, it's a linear progression in terms of animation from 500 to 0. Alternatively, you can use something else called ease, which will kind of ease things in a little bit nicer. So it won't be a linear result. As you get closer and closer, it's not going to be a linear result, but it's going to be a smoother result. And so you won't be able to tell until you start animating these things. But this is kind of how you create these really nice kind of like effectors and whatnot within After Effects. And you can copy and paste these expressions to pretty much any property, apply it however you want, and you can create a nice little rig just like this. And this can be very, very handy if you're using this kind of stuff to drive like infographics, UI, data-driven animations. You want to keep it as dynamic and fluid as possible. And this can be a nice little way to kind of create really nice dynamic user interfaces and, really save you time in terms of animation. The only caveat is that you need to know kind of what dimension a property is. So like scale and position, it can be 2D, 3D, depending on, if it's 3D layer or not. Stuff like, fast blurs, glows, most things are just one-dimensional properties like effects and whatnot. But if it's position or scale, it can be a little bit trickier, or 3D layers can be a little bit trickier. You can either Google it or search in the After Effects scripting guide as to kind of like what this property type is. But that's pretty much it. That's how you create this really nice reactive, responsive effector type system within After Effects using some simple expressions to drive your animations dynamically. Before I go, I want to give a quick thanks to our sponsors over at Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. Squarespace is the all-in-one platform to create an amazing website, whether it's for your store, online business, or portfolio. They have amazing things to choose from, fully customizable so you can make it the way you want it to look like, without having AD coding and all required. They have awesome 24-hour support, and best of all, if you use your promo code DOJO at checkout, you can actually save 10% off your order and support the Dojo, so check it out over at squarespace.com/dojo. Squarespace, the #1 place to create an amazing website. So that's pretty much it, guys. This is how you create a nice little effector system within After Effects. Let me know if you guys want me to make a series on how to create various effectors within Cinema 4D within After Effects. If you like this video, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more videos like these. My name is Vincent Nguyen from the Creative Dojo, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye, guys.